everyone, and welcome back to the Rare Record Room. Today I'm going to do a flip through video where I'll be browsing through some selected LP records from my collection according to their genre and showing some essential albums from these specific categories such as rock and roll, rhythm and blues, beat music, 1960s pop music, soul music, psychedelic rock, blues rock, prog rock, country rock, glam rock, hard rock and punk and new wave. Today I'm looking at British rock and roll from the late 50s, early 60s, specifically rock and roll artists prior to the British invasion around 1963-4. Let's get into it. British rock and roll traces its roots to skiffle music, a mix of American folk, blues, bluegrass and other genres, usually comprised of guitar, vocals, washboard and tea-chest bass. Its main proponent was Lonnie Donegan, a member of Chris Barber's jazz band. Donegan would perform jug band music during their concert intervals, and these skiffle breaks would become as popular as the jazz music itself. Restyled as the Lonnie Donegan Skiffle Group in 1955, they scored a transatlantic top 10 hit with a fast tempo version of Lead Belly's Rock Island Line. Starting with Cumberland Gap in 1957, Donegan achieved 3 UK number ones and influenced a generation of stellar British rock musicians, including John Lennon, Mick Jagger, Van Morrison, Roger Daltrey and Jimmy Page. In the UK, Lonnie Donegan was arguably as important in the emergence of rock and roll as Elvis Presley. Donegan's first LP was the 10-inch Showcase album, released in 1956. This included a cover of the Carter family's Wabash Cannonball, as well as the traditional American folk songs Frankie and Johnny and I Shall Not Be Moved. It was reissued by Pye Records as a 12-inch LP in 1968, as shown here. His follow-up LP, titled Lonnie, also a 10-inch record, was released in 1958, on which he performed songs written by Alan Lomax and Lonnie Johnson, from whom he took the name. His third LP was his first 12-inch record, titled Lonnie Rise Again, which appeared in 1959. This included covers of songs written by the Carter family and Cole Porter, and a version of the traditional folk song The House of the Rising Sun. We'll leave Lonnie Donegan there, as in 1959 the British rock and roll scene was taking off with several teen idols entering the charts. Spearheading these was Cliff Richard, who began his recording career in 1958, styled as a rebellious teen rocker in the mould of US pioneers Elvis Presley and Little Richard. Starting with the self-titled Cliff, backed by the Drifters and released in early 59, this LP includes his debut 1958 single Move It, plus covers of songs written by or made famous by artists such as Elvis, Buddy Holly, Little Richard, Jerry Lee Lewis, Roy Orbison, Ricky Nelson, Ritchie Valens and Gene Vincent. Also from 1959 is his second LP, Cliff Sings, recorded at Abbey Road Studios. Cliff Sings contains a similar mix of American rock and roll covers of songs written by or performed by Elvis Presley, Eddie Cochran, Carl Perkins and Fats Domino. On this album he is once again backed by the newly named Shadows, renamed to avoid confusion and legal issues with the US vocal group The Drifters, led by Benny King. Next up is Me and My Shadows, recorded in late 1959 and early 60 at Abbey Road. This record is less reliant on cover songs, featuring 5 original songs written by members of the Shadows or by Cliff himself. Possibly the most notable of the covers is by leading rock and roll songwriter Otis Blackwell, who wrote landmark songs for Elvis Presley, Jerry Lee Lewis and Peggy Lee. Shown here are 2 of the Shadows' co-writers, members Chet Harris and Tony Meehan. Moving on to Listen to Cliff, again backed by the Shadows, this was released in April 61 and features 3 original songs co-written by Shadows guitarist Bruce Welch, as well as covers including rhythm and blues numbers What I'd Say by Ray Charles and Blue Moon performed by the doo-wop group The Marcells, as well as the mega ballad Unchained Melody. Finally, we come to 21 Today, released in late '61 and featuring covers of American rockers by Chuck Berry, Johnny Otis, Fats Domino and Gene Vincent, as well as 3 original songs co-written by Cliff Richard or the Shadows members. Like all the early Cliff Richard albums on Columbia, this was originally issued with a green and gold record label. Later pressings from the mid to late 1960s feature the familiar black label. We'll leave Cliff there, as his next LP was a lighter soundtrack for the Young Ones movie, and thereafter he would settle down to a string of milder pop records. Moving on to the Shadows in their own right, they were pioneers of the 4-member instrumental format, performing rock and roll and surf rock. Their self-titled debut LP was recorded in late 1960 and features several original songs as well as covers of songs from Sonny Curtis, Santa and Johnny and Buddy Holly's collaborator Norman Petty. They followed this up in 1962 with Out of the Shadows, which included several originals written by the Shadows, one from Cliff Richard, a cover of Bo Diddley, and Perfidia, made famous by contemporary American instrumental rockers The Ventures. Next, they released a compilation LP, The Shadows' Greatest Hits, truly a best-of collection packed with hit songs recorded in 1960 to 62, including the British chart-topping singles Apache, Kon-Tiki, Wonderful Land and Dance On, as well as the top 10 hits Man of Mystery, FBI, The Savage and Guitar Tango. Now we move from London to Liverpool, whose biggest star prior to the Beatles was the roots rocker Billy Fury, who started recording in 1959. His debut LP, The Sound of Fury, now a 10-inch rarity, is arguably the most authentic rock and roll album to hail from Britain, and mixed a Sun Records style production sound with raw blues, rockabilly and aching balladeering. It includes the top 20 single That's Love, and is also notable for primarily being written by Fury himself. His next LP was a self-titled compilation collecting Fury's previously released singles including Maybe Tomorrow and 3 others from 1959, plus the top 10 hit Colette and Wondrous Place from 1960. This was followed by Halfway to Paradise in 1961, which included Goffin and King's title song that was a UK top 3 single, plus Billy Fury's cover of 1,000 Stars, which peaked at number 14. Now we come to the live album We Want Billy. Backed by the Tornadoes, famous for recording the hit song Telstar, which was the first ever transatlantic #1. We Want Billy is one of the earliest live albums in British rock history and featured renditions of Fury's hits and covers of several R&B and rock and roll staples such as Unchain My Heart, I'm Moving On, That's Alright Mama and Sweet Little 16. Finally, we leave Billy Fury with 1967's Best Of compilation, which collects singles from 1960 to 1964. In the latter half of the 60s, his singles increasingly failed to chart and he turned to acting prior to a minor comeback in the 1980s. Sharing the same manager as Fury, and incidentally Cliff Richard, was Adam Faith, another of Britain's early teen idols. His first LP, titled Adam, was released in 1960, but did not include his 2 #1 singles recorded for Parlophone. Instead, it featured covers of songs written by Burt Bacharach and the American rockabilly Jack Lewis. He followed this with a self-titled LP released in 1961, including a cover of the Crickets rocker I'm Gonna Love You Too and the folk song If I Had a Hammer, written by Pete Seeger, long before the famous versions recorded by Peter, Paul and Mary or Trini Lopez. The album was arranged by the composer John Barry, who would become famous for his soundtracks to the James Bond films. Next up comes From Adam with Love, recorded in 1962 and released in January 1963. It includes a cover of the Ray Charles R&B classic I Got a Woman, as well as 2 songs co-written by Tony Meehan of The Shadows and several written by Johnny Worth. Later in 1963, Adam Faith released the album For You, which included covers of Dion and the Belmonts' The Wanderer and Ricky Nelson's Hello Mary Lou, as well as covers of songs recorded by rockers Buddy Holly, Bobby Vee and the Everly Brothers. We'll leave Adam Faith in 1964 at his LP On the Move. This was a change of direction from rock and roll and ballads, steering towards the popular contemporary beat sound. His final top 40 single appeared in 1965. Thereafter he went into music management and production and continued his successful acting and theatrical career. Finally, an honourable mention of Johnny Kidd and the Pirates, who made arguably Britain's greatest rock and roll single, namely Shakin' All Over, which reached number 1 in August 1960. Formed in 1959, Kidd and the Pirates lineup underwent several changes in the early 60s and eventually disbanded in 1966. Kidd sadly died in a car accident later that year, but they will forever be remembered for the authentic rocker, which The Who later covered and described as our best pre-Beatles rock single. And that just about brings to an end my brief history, run-through look at some early British rock and roll records of the late 50s and early 60s.